Alright guys, I am getting ready to install Steve's control arm bushings. I've got brand new upper and lower control arm bushings. Now this is the O'Reilly's house brand called Master Pro, and it's been probably 10 or 12 years ago. I put these side by side with a Moog at the counter. They ordered both in and I got to compare them, and I didn't really see anything visually different other than these come bare metal. The Moog is basically coated, painted or something. I don't mind because these are going to get painted anyway. But anyway, this is the way I install new bushings. Everybody's different, but this is a tried and true method for me, and this works really nice. It is a little bit more work, but it doesn't really take that much more time in reality. So anyway, now when I work on control arms, I always go through and I look them over real good, and usually you have areas on a control arm that, like this is the upper, and this was pretty rough up here, so I used a 36 grit roll-lock on my angle grinder and just went through there and smoothed it. And at that point I need to go back with a Scotch-It disc on the angle grinder, and it will smooth that metal down really clean. It'll get rid of those 36 grit scratch marks. But I went in and I kind of worked all the areas on it to make sure it's good. And there was a nick mark here, and I cleaned that out. Another one there. Looks like there was another one there. So I just basically go through and clean up all the bad stuff. So what I will end up doing is I am going to weld the control arm to this piece of steel square tubing here. I'll put a weld on here and a weld over here. And what that's going to do is it's going to ensure that this doesn't bend when I'm pressing in the new bushings. Now, I don't use a press. I don't have a press here. Now, if you've never done this before and you do have a press, or you plan on taking it somewhere, that buddies or something that has a press, you need to keep in mind you need to put something in between the A-arms, like a piece of wood or a piece of steel that is cut to fit in there, because when you go to press these in, it will bend these in, it'll fold it in. And these uppers are the worst because they're just kind of hanging out here in the wind. There's no support here. So something needs to be supported in here to keep that from folding in when you're pressing the bushings in. So I weld mine on like this. And at that point I stick the bushing, this is a 1/2-inch drive socket that I have, and it fits over the rubber up to the flange on the bushing, and then I can stick it in. This is actually for a lower, so this bushing's bigger, but I'll stick it up in there with the shaft and the other bushing started, and then I will use my 2-pound hammer and hammer that in there. You don't have to beat the fire out of it. It goes in pretty good. It's not like it's a, you know, you got to put 5,000 pounds of pressure on it to get it in there. It'll go in there. But anyway, it's just how I do it. And then after the bushings are hammered in, I just basically take my cutoff wheel on this outside edge and I cut that weld, and then pull the A-arm off, and then I'll go back and clean that up with my angle grinder, and then go back and I'll Scotch-It disc it, and that Scotch-It disc will clean that metal, make it look like it's brand new and not have any marks in it. That's why I never did finish these out, is I'm going to be going back and working that over. So you always want to make sure that your upper A-arm shafts are not severely worn. I have seen these to where they're so bad that the hole is offset in the center. So just check those over. A good way to do it is to put the bushing on, the new bushing on there, and check side to side movement. It'll have a little bitty bit, but you don't want it to be super bad. So if they're highly worn, that bushing will just clunk back and forth. So these are, I mean, just a hair of it, slack, but it's good. It'll work. So anyway, that's where I'm at. I had blasted on these a long time ago. Now these are the original ones. These I had here. These upper A-arms I had here. These were actually from my 55 hardtop, which come from California. Mine was a good solid rust-free car, but I ended up going with tubular control arms, so mine are not as pitted as Steve's originals. These are up on the top of the frame. This is what you see most of. You know, so you see a lot of this with the hood up. So I wanted to go ahead and use these because they're not pitted as bad. They do have some pitting, but they're not near as bad as his. But anyway, these are his original lowers, and those guys, when they painted his frame, this is the paint that they put on the frame, and there's no primer under it, so I can only assume that this is like an epoxy primer. I did have to put a little effort in with the blaster to get this to come off, so it's stuck pretty good. So what I'm going to do is I did the hard to reach areas with the blaster, and I'm just going to go in and feather edge everything with sandpaper. So it doesn't really need to be blasted to bare metal because it has a pretty decent coating on it, but I am going to sand it smooth and feather edge all these outer edges and stuff that I did blast. But that is how I do it. You know, everybody's different the way they do stuff, and this is just my way of doing it. But when I do it this way, I have a handle to hold on to. When I lift this upright like this, and that A-arm's hanging off the side of it, I've got this to hold on to with my left hand, and you know, this is setting in the A-arm, and I can use my right hand to hammer that in there because I am right-handed after all. So I'm going to get started. Alright, so all I did was smooth that up, basically ground the weld off of it back to where the factory edge is, and then every time you get an A-arm out and you start really looking at it, you'll see all kinds of indents and just, you know, crap in there, and you can really radius this stuff and smooth it out real nice and make it look good. The upper A-arms especially, because this upper area is what you see when the hood's up. You'll see a lot of this control arm. So That's why I went in here and spent all that time cleaning all this up. I mean, not a lot of time, it's just running the roll lock over it, and then I'll have to go back and scotch it, disc it off there, but these will end up looking really clean. Now these A-arms are going to be high gloss black. I'm going to use single stage urethane black like you would use on a car or truck. Just this, exactly what's on my 55 hardtop, except I bought Kirker. I found a really good deal for a brand new gallon with the activator on eBay, and it was like 165 bucks or something like that. So I told Steve I would split it with him because obviously we don't need a gallon, but I can paint his upper and lower control arms with it and a lot of the other stuff. Probably the center link on the suspension as well. There'll probably be multiple things that I paint with that paint. So we just split it. That way I'll have half a gallon left over. But anyway, these on that low gloss black chassis with the gloss black, this is going to look fantastic. It'll have a lot of detail to it. Instead of the A-arms and the frame being painted the exact same color, when you do that, like if I painted these low gloss black the same as the chassis, when the hood's up at a show, when people look, it's going to look like it did before, like they went in there and painted everything together with one hit. I don't like that. I like to break things up with detail, and even though it's black, you can get the detail out of it with different shades of black, like low gloss, matte, satin, semi-gloss. That will in turn, when you're finished, it will look like those parts were painted separately. And in many cases it looks like a brand spanking new part that's never been installed before. So that's what I'm after. But I will say, when you weld this to the control arm, if you go in immediately and start hammering those in, when you weld that, it heats the A-arm up in that area, so the bushing goes in pretty easy. If you wait a little bit, it'll be a little bit harder to get in there. But it's always worked for me, and it doesn't fold it in, but you know, you do have to cut the edge. You have to cut both welds again, but you know, a cut-off wheel and a little bit of work with a roll lock disc, it's not that difficult to do. So anyway, now I'm ready for the second one, so I'm going to go ahead and get it going. But you guys get the idea how it's going, I guess. I didn't have my bushing out and ready. Got ahead of myself. Oh well. I'm not super hammering on that. I'm just, it's a firm hit, but it's hitting it. So anyway, it drives it in there. And that was what I was talking about by having a handle to hold on to. It works really nice, but I've fully seated them on both. Now, if the A-arm is cold, like if you weld it and then go eat lunch or whatever and come back, they do take a little bit more effort to put in there. But to me, it's just a fast way for me to do it, and I don't have a press. So anyway, the shaft spins, so we're good to go. So now I'll cut this one loose and work the edge and then move on to the other two. So not too bad of a job, I don't think, for, you know, doing something in the driveway on the cheap. Well, I almost got done with them A-arms. I run out of wire. It's like 4 o'clock, so I guess I'll get some wire tomorrow. Dang it. So I got this lower control arm done, this one, and the upper, or both uppers are done, one lower. This one, I need to weld to this, so I run completely out of wire. It kind of sucks, but that's the only A-arm left to put the bushings in. I almost made it, so now I'm just picking up shop here. But so the frame, other than it being dusty from sitting out here, man, this looks awesome. It turned out so nice. I mean, I showed it in the video yesterday, but I sure do like it, man. Until you get back here and then you start seeing all the rust pits. But again, we don't really care about all that. It's just that right there, that is what's going to make the difference. So on these front motor mounts, or side engine mounts, I welded the front to the chassis, but I am going to put some nice stainless bolts in there. So just to give it a little bling factor, I guess, but that'll kind of break up that chassis a little bit. It'll look really, really clean. So I guess that's it for today, guys. This is Friday, but Jim is coming in the morning to pick all the engine stuff up. I gathered everything up that he's going to need. Oh, almost forgot, I got paint stripper out back on the front cover, timing chain cover, trying to get all the old paint off of it. So I got to go do that before I put up shop, which is fine. So anyway, you're probably noticing this greasy transmission here. This is a recent acquisition. I got a hell of a good deal on this. This is a 400 turbo for a Buick Olds Pontiac pattern. It doesn't fit a Chevy, but it's a deep pan 400 turbo, and it has a yoke and everything. You can see where they cut the drive shaft off. So that was pretty nice. That was 50 bucks, man. You don't find those anymore for 50 bucks. It's been stored inside anyway. And then, never mind this turbocharged Buick V6 3.8 liter engine. This is a turbo V6 from a 79 Regal 3.8. It's pretty much a complete pull-out engine. That was 150 bucks. Anyway, I bought this stuff a couple weeks back, but that I'd known about, and then I heard the salvage was going out of business, so I went back over there, and I ended up getting that. And that was just kind of a bonus for 50 bucks, you know what I mean? But that, I thought about selling these to make a little money, but that will bolt to that engine, and I have a 400 turbo behind it. And I've always wanted to mess with one of these turbo carbureted V6s, so that may or may not end up in a Monte Carlo Super Sport. Thanks for watching.